Stand by. It is Tuesday. What is today? February 13th. Uh-oh, it's Wednesday the 13th.
Hope it's not
And
February.
John's calling us. John's calling from Dayton. He wants to move to Michigan. Anyway, this is the Digital Radio Roundtable discussion where we get a bunch of hams, and it's our first episode. And what we're doing is we are chatting about digital radio, any and everything. I've got a bunch of my ham radio friends and hopefully others. John was supposed to join us, but you can hear him. He's on the radio right now on my Anytone 878, but I'll turn him down. And we'll see what's going on. Hey, I'm Dana KC0MYP. Let's start Stan. We'll go Stan, then Ron, then Dave, then Brian. Tell us who you are, call sign, a little bit about you.
Hi, I'm Stan, WB8QJZ, and I'm up in Calumet, Michigan, in the extreme northern part of the UP on Copper Island. Been a ham since 1973. I got into DMR about 3 years ago now and have been enjoying it a whole heck of a lot. Other than that, I love to play with QRP stuff. I'm not a big amplifier person, high power person, but like portable stuff and QRP, and that's about it. So over to Ron.
Thank you. Ron, AC2UL. I have been a ham, original ham, that long, but when I was a kid, my uncle, who was an engineer at one of the local companies, got me and my cousin involved with it. So I've actually been involved with two-way radios since I was about 8 or 9 years old with him. We grew up on Heathkits and Radio Shack. And anytime a new catalog or anything like that came out, we had our name on the list and developed our Christmas lists and stuff like that for Santa. So we had a lot of fun with it. I've actually been a CBer ever since I could be legally, and we used his license quite a bit. But then we got into a little bit of code and stuff like that with Morse code, and we had a neighbor who was amateur, and he kept us busy on it and really guided us along to figure out what was going on. So about, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it is, I decided I'm going to get back into it. And that's what I did. And I've only had digital maybe 6 months or so, and I just love it. It's just great. It isn't that I don't like the analog stuff. I think that's great too. But one of my curiosities is that if you look at the history of ham radio, and you look at it starting out with some sort of restrictions about what you could do, for example, code, and then getting into audio, I'm wondering what the next type of wave is going to be with digital information, whether it be, ham radio or, I'm very interested in seeing what happens with AI and also AR with respect to ham radio.
To the airport this evening to pick up his brother who was coming in on an evening flight, but
That's
like
okay.
I said,
Go ahead, Ron.
Okay.
Continue.
All right. So, anyways, that's what I'm really interested in seeing about what the future is going to look like. And my goals of trying to do anything to try to help is to try to get some standards or policies or stuff like that to help this expand in a big way. And again, I think where DRs come in, that's great. I've gotten a few kids involved with it a little bit, and I hope that I'll be able to do more with that. That's where I am, and I'm not over the falls tonight.
Cool. Excellent. That's good to hear. And I love it. I'm talking at Bridgecom that we need to have a catalog. Radio Shack had theirs every year, but sometimes they think it's old. You can email so much quicker, but catalog, you can look at it, physically see it. So who knows?
Yeah.
Dave, you're a wild man, and the cops haven't arrested you yet today. Tell us about yourself.
I hope the cops aren't coming after me. let's see, KF8S. So my original call was N8NZD. I got my license back in the early 90s. And the reason why I got into ham radio was mostly to avoid long distance phone calls. So, and not really necessarily long distance phone calls, but zone calls. You know, if you lived like on a county line or something, you could be long distance. So the guy, you know, a mile away from you. So that was one way that me and my friends could kind of communicate. One of my one friend, he got his license first from his buddies, and then we kind of tacked on onto it. So I used to play around with CB radios, you know, Radio Shack catalog, all that stuff in the late 80s, mid late 80s, and but mostly just goofing around, probably talking to the teenagers. You know, I was a kid back then, and I was talking to messing with the teenagers or whatever, and you know, they were jamming me and I was jamming them, but or agitating is what they call it, right? So but yeah, so I got into ham radio when the first no code tech license came out, and got involved with a group down here called Usika. Did one field day with them, and then I kind of faded away from the hobby. I guess life happened, college happened, and didn't really come back to ham radio. There was a lull between 1995 and like 2021, because 2021 I came back. I was actually interested in GMRS because of the, you know, the whole prepper stuff. Everybody, I wanted to see what people were doing with that, but that got kind of boring to me pretty quickly. And I go, you know what? I still have my ham radio license. Let me see how that's doing. And that's what got me into digital. Was like, oh wow, there's digital on ham radio now. You know, there was kind of like, imagine waking up in a time capsule. You know, like, oh wow, there's digital now on ham radio. What's that all about? So the first radio I got digitally was the Anytone 878. This is my original one when I came back to the hobby in 2021. And of course, down here in the Detroit area, we're more of a fusion area. So I've got a fusion radio in my car, and sometimes I will port it over to a DMR with the open spot. But I do have a hot spot here. I run it off of the antenna on my roof. I bought one of those DVM boards that you can, it's got like a little 9-pin serial on it, so you can make a high power hotspot. And that's where Dana makes the joke where I walk the dog and talk on the DM TechNet.
Still want to see your dog. Still want to see the dog.
She's coming. But yeah, so I kind of went backwards. I went back to analog. I'm really doing a lot with All Star now, but I know this is digital, so we won't talk about digital, but I run
we talk about anything. Talk about anything.
Yeah, so I run a hub. It started out as just me tinkering, and then a group of my friends came over on one friend came over on Echolink, and I go, you know what, you should get an All-Star node. Let's not do Echolink, let's do All-Star node. So we all went out, either got Shari kits, or there's these white dongles that you can buy off of Amazon now that you can plug in the USB port of the Pi. So it's a little bit more accessible now. And then there's a guy, I don't know where he's located. I think he's out in California. Allscan.info. That guy, he just creates a bunch. He's been creating a lot of like radioless nodes and all kinds of fun stuff. So All-Star is a digital mode because it is digital when it transfers through the network. It's just, you can use any HT with it. So that's why I like it. And we linked up what we call the universal reflector. And we can talk about that later, but the universal reflector allows us to bridge the digital. So we have the All-Star for the analog, and we have the universal reflector that kind of has all the modes in it, and then it bridges over to the All-Star. So most of the folks speaking on my node are All-Star, but we occasionally have visitors come in through digital that don't yet have All-Star. You know, as we convert them though. So
you and Stan you guys could talk all show about All-Star node. And
yeah.
Also you've got your own TGIF channel talk group.
Yep, that's bridged in to so it's kind of like there's the All-Star, right, node, there's the universal reflector, and then we've got TGIF is linked into the universal reflector. So we get the digital, the DMR, into the URF, and then that comes into the all-star node. So it's really cool how all this stuff just like comes together. And there's a lot of, I can't take credit for all of it, because there's a lot of people that behind the scenes have created all this software, and you just gotta kind of see them laid out on the floor and figure out how to put them together. And so it's been a journey there.
So Dave, are you doing anything with Ham Shack Hotline, and do you have a bridge into your All-Star node from that?
I did at one point, but nobody was ever using it, so I took it down. So yeah, the guy emailed me. He was like, "Are you sure you want to take your bridge down?" Yeah, nobody's using it. But yeah, I did for a little while. I had Ham Shack Hotline linked into it, but not anymore.
Cool.
But
Let's keep on going here. Brian, you were next. Say hi. Tell us your background. We can't hear him. His mic is muted. He's speaking in sign language or
there
something
you
like
go.
that.
That's a perfect example of where my head is usually at with radio. So that's I'm kind of the new kid on the block. I'm in October, 1st of November. It'll be 4 years that I've been in ham radio. My son came to me and he says, "Dad," he said, "I'm going to go get my technician's license. Just wonder if you're interested." So I went along with him, and we both got our technician's license. And his call sign is KE8NJS, and mine is KE8NJT. And then the journey started. My son is a computer nut. He's the head programmer for Michigan Delta Dental, and he wanted me to get into SDR radio. And I took one look at it and said, "Nope, that's too much computer stuff." And it was a lot of years ago that I bailed out of a computer programming class at LCC, Lansing Community College. Anyway, as I got into analog, and that was a good way to get into digital, I guess. Some guy over on the other side of Mason, I don't know what he said. I don't remember what he said, but he got me into this. And it's been a real fast downhill slide ever since. So I've got an 878 and a Skybridge. If you see that clock behind me, the Skybridge sits right behind it. And my next goal is to program my FDM 400 to cross mode from YSF into DMR. And I think I finally understand how to do it. I just have to get at the radio and do it. And then after that, we'll be
That's
getting.
what hams do. We're hands-on. We like to tinker and play with stuff.
Well, I'm tailor-made for that, because as you see, I talk with my hands. So anyway, so I want to change out this 2730 for a 578 in my base station here. I can't reliably hit the DMR repeater in Lansing with my handheld. But the one thing that amazes me about all of this stuff is the ease of connecting and the clarity. Yesterday, I spent some time on the radio with Rolf in Germany, and it was like he was sitting here in the room with me. And that's a far cry from what I go through every morning at 7 with the Christian Amateur Radio Fellowship at 3930 kilohertz. Boy, oh boy, this morning was a perfect example. Signals came and went, and you don't see that with DMR. My original objection to DMR was it's not really radio, it's computer. And I'm coming to find that that's the future. Just like Ron said, what is the next step? Where are we going in the future? And not to say that analog is bad or old fashioned or anything like that. It has its own science, but we're moving. in a lot of ways that none of us have ever dreamed of. And 70 years ago, when my cousin gave me his little homemade crystal set, I never dreamed that I'd be sitting at a desk with this kind of equipment, nor talking to people where I'm talking with them. It's just amazing. Anyway, I'm rambling, so I apologize for that. But that's my background, and I have on the DMR TechNet and the Michigan One DMR, have sat here and just salivated at the knowledge that was coming in, listening to guys talk. So it's been a good ride. It really has.
You'll have fun, and things change because I remember a buyer at Radio Shack when a new catalog comes out, Ron, oh wow, look at this. Wait till next year. We just got the catalog. And also, last I checked, I didn't see too many chariots out moving people around the city. I think we're getting around different ways, so improvements. Now we have Tom with his new dog, Roxy. Tom, say hi to everyone. Tell us about yourself.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay. Here, Roxy, come here. Well, I've got my ham license back. I told everybody back in 1977. And then I went to college and didn't really do much with ham radio. And really back in the early 90s when when all the VHF and UHF repeaters started to open up, because the tech code went away. Tons of people were getting their ham license back then. And so I got back into it partially because of that. But I was doing digital modes on HF. There was a digital mode called Amtor. I did that. Then there was Pactor, Amtor, Gtor, Gtor2, all these funny noise, reet, 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 reet. That's what it sounded like if you had the volume up you could hear the transmitter relay click, 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 click on the HF transmitter. I had a Yaesu FT757-2, which is a tremendous radio, and I even had it in my car for a while. Anyway, that's what I did, and I never wanted to get into DMR when I was hearing about it because it had to do with a computer, exactly like Brian said. Because here's what happens. I worked as a systems engineer at OnStar here for a while, and I didn't want to look at a computer ever because I just looked at it all the time. So it just didn't sound like, I still have that problem today. At the end of the day, let's go do some code plug upgrades. I just spent 6 hours looking at the computer. Recently I got some new glasses and that's helping a lot, but I'd rather go outside with an HT and go on a walk and talk to people than do that. But DMR is so fun. I mean, I'll do whatever it takes. I don't know why it's so fun. I just enjoy it. Like Dave was saying, I put a Fusion Yaesu radio in my truck, and that's fun too, but it's still not as fun for some reason. I don't know why. DMR just is fun. Fusion is kind of limited to what the repeaters are doing around here. You can connect to this room and that room. And if you want to, you can switch the repeater over, but I always feel like I'm obtrusing into somebody's air. You can't just go to a talk group with Yaesu Fusion. You go to a room that the repeater's on. For instance, the best DMI repeater I know up north at Stutz repeater, it's got all the Brandmeister talk groups. You could talk to any of them. It's on slot 2, I think, or whatever. So you're only taking up slot 2 no matter what you're doing. Whereas it might not be, it's not full time, but you can talk on it. Whereas the Fusion stuff seems to be, you're going to be in the Zombie Network, or you're going to be in the Kansas City, or you're going to be in the Denver stuff. So I don't know. It's still good, but the radio is awesome. So I'm gonna put that radio back in my shack here, and then put the 578 back out in my truck now that I got it to work with my open spot and stuff. And anyway, so that's all for the last however many years that is. When the Amtor Pactor stuff, I don't know what happened. I did CW just as much, and that's all I've ever done. 80 meter, 40 meter. 15 meter and 20 CW at night in the evenings. That's just what I've always done. The first time I've never talked on ham radio ever since I've had it. I mean, I've never had a VHF, UHF radio in my car ever in all these years. I had HF, but never had a VHF. I don't know why. I just never did it. Now that's all I want to do. So it's kind of like a new chapter, DMR, and it's fun. It's learning new stuff. It keeps it interesting. Plus, it was tough to master, tough to get on the air because I just was reading about it and I figured it out on my own pretty much, and it was very satisfying. So that's why I like DMR. My dog was sitting behind me a minute ago, but you'll notice she had a ball in her mouth. This dog will chase a ball all day. It's like, okay, you're done doing what you're doing. Here's my ball. Let's go out and throw it for a while. So she's looking out the door right now with a ball in her mouth. You know, oh, look at that nice grass out there. She just wants me to throw the ball for her. So when we're done here, I will. Anyway, that's what's going on here in Clarkston. The sun's out right now. Finally, it's been a dreary day today. It's 57, so it's pretty chilly. But at least the sun's out, and tomorrow it'll be out also. So right now, my absolute the things I'm working on, I'm tweaking. I haven't been, I'm much less on the air sorry, phone call there. I'm much less on the air in the summer because I'm out fishing or something like that. Just not. I'm behind on my code plugs. I just updated my contact list the other day for the first time in a month or two, and I'm catching up on that right now. I'm considering getting another open spot and just leaving it in my vehicle and just going that way because I'm kind of tired of worrying about what repeater does what, and then I don't have to do that. But that's my projects right now, is really cleaning up my code plugs and expanding the use of my OpenSpot 4 because it's quite a thing. And I may get another one or another hotspot. And I have one hotspot that's not working. So I'm going to have to, it just doesn't connect to the Wi-Fi anymore. I have to start over on that and see what that needs. But other than that, that's what's going on. I was over in Oxford today and I just got back. So that's about 20 minutes from here. Anyway, just relaxing now today. So anyway, good to see everybody.
Cool. Thanks for joining us, Tom. And you got some fun hobbies other. I think you fish year round though, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I fish in the winter. We have ice fishing. I'm hoping that works. And I want to tell you real quick, I put a DB25 Radiodity, the tiny little radio. It's a very good radio. And I've got about 1,000 miles on my off-road motorcycle. So it's been dusted and splashed and vibrated, rained on, splashed, and it seems to be working still. Because I figured here's what's going to happen. It's either going to just not work, or something's going to happen. It's protected. I've got it mounted, tucked in there, so it's pretty hard to get at it. But I figured I bought an open box one. I saw it on Radiodity. If you pay attention to the Radiodity webpage, a month ago or so, they had a GD77. They had one for sale because it came back in the warranty or something. And I was like, my finger was I almost clicked on it, but I thought I don't need it. So I didn't get it. But I was looking at them one morning or whatever, and there it was, DB25 open box, $169. So I figured if that thing falls off and gets ran over by something, I won't worry about it. But it seems to be holding in there. I've got a great setup on the motorcycle. I've got a great big giant push to talk. Can't miss it. I can operate all the controls, but my mind is not really into talking and remembering call signs and things when I'm navigating a dirt road. And so that honestly is, I didn't really expect that. I thought I'd be talking to everybody all over the place, but you don't realize that's the wonders of running a motorcycle is your brain forgets about any problem, anything you've got going on in the day. You get on that bike and after about 15 minutes, all of a sudden you get off. It's like, oh, it wasn't such a bad day after all. It's a phenomena with your brain. It has to do with chemicals moving around. I'm not kidding you. I've heard guys say that about golf. They get out there and they play, 8 holes, 9 holes. All of a sudden they forgot about what happened that day. It's very healthy. Anyway, so because of that, if I had a cruiser, Goldwing type of cruising along type on the highway motorcycle, I could probably hold down whoops, hold down that push to talk and yak some more, but I can't. So that's one thing that's interesting about motorcycle ham radio. I'll tell you real quick, I was in QST magazine once because I was mentioned in QST magazine back in the 90s. It was because I had a CW QSO with a guy who was on a Goldwing riding to Alaska, and he was left-handed. So he could have run the throttle and then run the key with his left hand, and he was an expert CW operator. But I chatted for him for hours, and then when he was coming back home, he lived in Connecticut, I think. When he was coming back home, I worked him again. I might have been 15 meters or something, but he mentioned me then in his article. I'll have to find that somewhere. But he was just rolling along down the highway. It's a little bit different. So anyway, it's fun. That's super cool. I'm trying to figure out how I can mount ham radio on my new dog. I'm going to get one of those packs or something and put a little antenna on there. I could put a hotspot and DM. That's not a bad idea. And then I could walk with my handheld, have the hotspot and stuff on the dog. And there you go. So stand by for that.
Better boost the power on your handheld up to, for Dave and I were talking 0.2 of a watt up to 2 watts. Is that what you got now?
Oh, on the hotspot? You mean?
On the 878, the low power on the 878 is 200 milliwatts.
Yeah,
and
it's tiny.
Medium power goes up to 2 though. So you don't get your
Yeah.
1.
Yeah. Yeah. I kick mine out. Well, I use a stubby antenna, so I tend to push a little power through it. The battery's so good on the radio.
If it comes into focus, yeah, I just got one of these little Binfu antennas.
Yeah, that's the perfect thing. Yeah. So I've decided of all my radios, this is a good radio. So I was just thinking, Stan said he had one, he never used it. You should. It's a good radio. Or you never configured it. I was just thinking, man, my conclusion is that this thing, after, I don't know how long we had these things, 1.5 years or something, 2 years. I don't know when I got it, but it's fine. It's, my GD77, one of them, the battery doesn't want to hold. It falls off sometimes. The plastic is worn where it snaps, but that radio was $88. This one's a lot more expensive, but man, it's, this will last until they come out with something better. And then that'll be the reason to get another
And now that it got USB-C battery, I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, you were talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, USB.
Mhm.
I can tell you, I can attest for this because I had a couple days off over the last weekend, that this thing will last 12 hours of talking, because I was talking from noon until almost midnight to various people, and the thing lasts all day. And this wasn't even digital, that's analog, so it's using more battery on analog.
Right.
If it was on digital, it would have lasted even longer. So
I've got a GD77 I set up as a high power hotspot running 3 watts. I've got the external power supply for it, which I got out of Australia because that's the only place you could find them.
Wow.
And I had that running on into a Phelps Dodge Superstation Master antenna at 175 feet.
Oh, wow.
And I was getting about a good 12-mile radius with the thing. Set it up for a public mode, so I have about a half dozen folks in there, and the thing works great. And there's no problem with it at that power level. Those GD77s are just absolutely awesome. And I agree with you on the DB25, Tom. God, I've got 4 of them, 2 in Florida, 2 up here. I run one on a fixed station and I run one mobile, and they're just bulletproof, and they're so much fun to use and very, very reliable, and a lot of features in a small, relatively inexpensive package.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, you gotta send that article about you and QST. I'd like to see that. We can throw that out.
Yeah, I gotta find it. I gotta find it. It was quite a few years ago. And you know how I found out? I was just reading QST. I was just paging through and said, hey, I'm in here. It was
I
kind of
figured
funny.
the guy would have CW told you that. Hey, we can't forget Steve. I'll bet he's doing LODA. You guys know what LODA is?
Legions on the Air.
Legions on the Air. Hi,
Yeah.
Steve. He's up in Petoskey. Steve, tell us about you.
Hey guys,
Hey.
so we're here at the MWR night at the American Legion Post in Petoskey, Post 194, Carl Weaver, and we play pool. We don't have a bar, but we play pool, drink pop, sit around, play card games and stuff like that. Right now, we're trying to get some Roku TV set up. I did bring in a Xbox so we can try to play some video games on the console. So that'd be cool. But I got my start in DMR, or I got my amateur radio license in 2003 while I was working here in Petoskey. And I've been on and off. I had an HF radio in my car. I made contacts with people in Europe. I made contact 100 kilometers out of Moscow on my car coming in from Charlevoix to Petoskey on 100 watts on my 706.
Were they speaking English or were they Russian?
They were speaking perfect English. Yeah. And I still have my ICOM 706 Mark II-G, which is great radio. And I just got an ICOM 7300. I like the when I got into DMR last December, it was kind of a big step because when I first heard about digital radio, it was D-Star. So that was all that was out. And it was quite expensive for those handheld radios or even the mobile radios when they came out from ICOM. So I couldn't justify, getting into that. But I like the price point now with the radios are less expensive than an $800 handheld. You can get into it with, I bought my 878 for $213 on, because it was a previous model. It was the 878 UV2 without the Bluetooth and without analog receive, which I said, well, what difference does that make? Well, when I got my 578 and that actually has analog receive. So when the handheld was shooting out the APRS, it was showing up on the 578, all the data. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But it would be nice to have that on the handheld. But that's where I'm
coming.
so far.
It's coming.
Yep.
It's coming.
So I'm gonna probably take off a little bit, get back to my group here. But nice seeing you guys. Nice seeing you, Stan, Tom, Rollo, Brian, Dave. Nice meeting you guys.
Hey, Dave, is that your amateur radio Legion hat? Oh no, I said that wrong. Steve.
We just got these in. This is our Pulse hat. So it says Pulse 194, Petoskey, Michigan, with the American Legion emblem. So we got these in. We got 40 in, and we sold 12 last night.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll get one next time I'm up in that neck of the woods.
Oh,
Hey, I'm
you
writing
have to
some
remember.
I know where you're at. I've been there. I'm writing some notes. I want to throw something out. See what you guys
Well,
think
he's in the Sons of American Legion. We can transfer you over to our post.
That is correct. I got my
Yeah.
Legion hats in the other room. Sorry.
How many people do we have for the Sons, Brian? We have 7 or 8 people that want to sign up for the Sons of American Legion here at our post.
With our family, there's 4 of us, 4 brothers. We're all in it. So
there you go.
Cool.
Nice talking to you guys. Nice seeing you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for checking in.
All right.
So Steve, you can get me back in there again. I was a member. I forget what the post was, and they never sent me a renewal, and I dropped out of it. And
there you go.
Yeah. So we'll be talking. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah. Contact me. We can get you set up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good deal.
Yeah.
In fact, Steve had an American Legion convention up in Sault Ste. Marie.
And Brian Morrison.
We can take care of that tonight. All we need is, we'll give you the
credit card.
Venmo account.
Yeah, we have
just
Venmo.
send us $50 by Venmo.
Yeah. Right, guys. Bye.
Cool. Thanks.
7-3.
So, interesting. We don't really have a topic. It's roundtable, but I wrote a couple things down. First, and this is something Tom talked about a long time ago, Is DMR amateur radio? Something to think about. And then Dave, you didn't get your license because until you didn't have to know code. Is that correct?
Yeah, it just happened to be that was when the stars aligned. That's when I was interested in the ham radio. Yeah, so no, that was a perfect time.
Because I worked at Radio Shack, I sold the stuff, but wait, you have to know code? I don't think so. And then they changed it. I got my license in 2002. So actually, I had a license in 77 from the FCC. And then digital networks, DMR, TGIF, YSF, free DMR, M17, NXDN, DMR Plus, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple. Preferences, what do you guys like, don't like? But, and what do you think, Pi-Star or Arduino? But is DMR amateur radio? Who wants to go first? Dan?
Sure.
That's
It's
a ridiculous question. Go ahead, Stan.
I was gonna say, of course, it's amateur radio. There's a radio on one end. There's a radio on the other end.
Yeah.
At both of them, it requires a license to do it. It's amateur radio. It's just that we have another link in the middle that lets us communicate all over the world. So, yes, it is. To those who don't think it is.
Ron, you've been around a while. What do you think?
Well, I have to go back again. I always like looking at history a little bit. And you look at how code really first started. It started with copper wire along railroad tracks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then from there,
it's the same thing.
Exactly. And you had two amateurs on the end trying to learn the code. And so, I definitely think it is. The other thing too is I don't know if any of you were scouts or not, but when I was in scouts in the late 50s, early 60s, I'm 76, we had to learn 5 words a minute during first class.
Wow.
So I mean, I was right there with it and was able to get my license, but I never got up to Buffalo, New York. I'm in Niagara Falls to get an amateur radio license. So anyways, yes, I do believe it is. You got 2 amateurs on each end and some mechanisms of getting those people together.
Dave.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I mean, you could probably generalize this as digital ham radio, or is using the internet ham radio. And I would say, yes, it is, because you're talking to another amateur radio operator on the end. You are using a radio to talk. Maybe you're not going RF 5 miles, but you have your own, in a sense, repeater in your own house. So you get to do whatever you want with it, and you get to link it any way you want to. I mean, I personally love being able to go in the car and just be able to talk to, I don't have to bring my hotspot with me and just be able to talk on the repeaters. Down here we've got the FBI network, or the Flying Beers network. That's getting an overhaul soon, hopefully. And
Flying Beer. Oh, yeah, hold on.
You got the Flying Beers International. You got the Who Cares. So I mean, we're kind of like cousins. But yeah, no, it's going to get fixed up. But so during the day, we link in. So I think the future is, to answer this question in a roundabout way, I think the future is hybrid. You use your hotspots, you use your digital when you need to, you use the repeaters when you can, and let's have fun. That's the whole thing with amateur radio operators. Let's just do everything. let's merge technology with radio, and maybe we can get some young people into the hobby again.
And that we need to recruit. We need to recruit young people. Tom, you're pretty boisterous on this one.
Well, I will admit that when I first learned, it was kind of like what Dave was saying, hey, digital ham radio, that caught my interest. Yeah, of course, audio, digitize it, make it better. And then I thought, wait a minute, it uses the internet. Come on. But it's not that way at all. So a person that doesn't really know what they're talking about might say it can't be ham radio. And the argument that, oh, well, what if the internet goes out? What if the internet goes out? If the internet goes out, all right, let's get the baseball bats and barbed wire out, and at least you've got ham radio to talk about. Whereas, well, we've got, HF in case, the internet goes, oh, really? Ask Brian, how'd his net go this morning? He was talking about guys are dropping in and out. So propagation isn't perfect. It's, you kind of have to time things. And so, well, we can see your assistant there, Dana. Your assistant showed up.
Come here. Come here. Come here. Come here. Hold on. Come here. Come here. Sorry.
That background's the same thing they use on the Star Trek show. Fade in and out. Anyway, it took about 5 minutes before I started to realize this is the future, and I think young people will relate to it more. I'm not young. I don't consider myself a young person. If I have trouble, the best technical advice I've gotten is, I ask somebody who's 25. If I have trouble with my work computer, I say, who could I call that's about 25? Oh, do this. My business went paperless with the help of college students, basically. And so young people, the internet's normal to them. It's the same thing. Whereas, HF propagation used to be normal to anybody in the 40s and 50s. It was high tech. Now it's the internet. So I don't know how would you explain it? How you would address it? But has nothing to do with the fact that it's on the internet. It's still amateur radio operators experimenting and being amateur and learning and inventing, then going to work and getting a patent on it. That's basically what ham radio has been responsible for. So I've always thought RF energy is just fascinating. That's really the basis of my whole interest in everything, is being able to send something, energy somehow gets through the elevator door and it's still, into your house through the wall. How does that happen? So it's it's the same attitude. So I would never doubt for a fraction of a second. Anybody who says DMR is not ham radio doesn't know what DMR is. So that last what did they used to call it in the phone the guys that install telephones? It's the last 12 inches or whatever.
The last mile.
What is it?
The last mile is what they used to call it.
where these guys
Fiber to
take
the
the
home.
wire to here. Yeah, so that last mile is RF anyway, usually your hotspot to your radio. So it's all the same. So if the internet goes down, well, you won't be able to bank, you won't be able to do anything really. So that's
back in the Stone Ages.
That could happen, but your ham radio will still work. Your DMR radio will still work digitally if you wanted to, if there's absolutely nothing. So it's an easy argument to defend, but I can see how people would say, oh, how could that be ham radio?
Well,
I mean, you can talk simplex DMR. So if it, so it can go
That's
long
right.
distances. So,
and at Radio Shack, one thing, technology is great when it works. When it doesn't, as Tom was talking, it doesn't. Brian, you're the new guy. What do you think? Is DMR amateur radio? His mic is turned off again.
No, my mouse timed out. Let me tell you a story. Years ago, and I'm an Army veteran, and I spent time in the artillery and the infantry. But years ago in the artillery, you had forward observers, and they sat up on a hill and they looked through the binoculars and saw where the enemy was, and they called in an approximate grid. And the cannons fired first round, and it went here, and they would say left 200, add 200, or whatever the adjustment was. And then they fired again, and then they'd say, well, okay, you're right on the target now, fire for effect. And of course, all the guns fired, and just boom, whole chunk of the earth jumped up in the air. Then later on, we got something called GLID, ground lasing device. And they would pull up a box, it was probably about this big, look through it, push a button, and they would lase the target. there was no radio communication because that box was a radio, and it sent the information back to the guns, to their computer, and it controlled the guns. You got no adjustments because you had a perfect location. So your first volley of rounds was fire for effect, destroying the enemy. Now, having gone through that process, did that mean that the fellows on the ground were no longer forward observers? No, not at all. The development allowed for a much more effective fire on the enemy. So it was a better product, if you will. And I guess that's what I compare this digital stuff to, is we've come a long ways. We've made it more effective, but we're still ham operators. That's my
true.
story.
That's cool. I forget who it was. Could have been Ron. How do we recruit young people to this hobby?
Hey, Dana, before you get in there, let me just mention one other thing about the internet. I mentioned before point to point with Morse code and all that sort of stuff. But in computer lingo and stuff like that, there used to be point to point with computers talking back and forth together. And then they came out with things where the computers could develop its own network and be a switch within the computer itself. Then they backed it out to the network level. And maybe some of you have heard of a thing called TCP/IP and SNA and all those type of things, where it really is a switching network. So if one of your links were to go down, you had alternate paths that it would go to keep you going. So again, just prior to this, what they did is actually had computers sitting there looking at two networks coming into it and being able to take either one of them out. Either one of them data could go out of, and it would normally go out both of them, trying to load balance it. But if one of those networks were to go down, it would go around the way to get there. Well, then it backed out, so that then became the network itself with this thing called TCP/IP. And even today, to a certain degree, you have that with your home when you're looking at it. You have hotspots on your telephone, and a lot of you have cable TV with internet on it, or DCL or something like that. So there are alternate ways that you can get around with this. And that's why I think that a lot of that, even in my home right now, I have a switch in there so that if my copper wire, so to speak, internet goes down, it'll automatically flip over to my telephone. One other thing is that you just look at it. I don't know if anybody heard of a thing called Gopher. That was a prelude to the internet, so to speak. And that was where you started to do your lookups and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, it was just interesting. That's all. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Dana, but I thought it might be appropriate just to throw that point in there about the networks. I think they're becoming more and more reliable. And even if you look at it, there are certain nodes that may go out in the internet someplace, but they're always routing around. If you were to actually see an internet outage map and stuff like that, it's unbelievable. You just wonder how things get done. It's almost like some of these airplane problems that they have here today with trying to keep the airplanes with the airports and all that synced up together.
I was going to say the Department of Redundancy Department.
Yes.
So, and Stan, that was your livelihood, was it not?
Yeah. But and getting back, you mentioned TCP/IP and whatnot. There's a group of us that were running TCP/IP over packet radio over 2 meters and whatnot back in the late 80s, early 90s. I had an IP address. Dana KC0MYP was in charge of doling out those addresses, and we were running stuff on 8088 processors with floppy drives, and you could run the whole network on that. And wow, you could connect down, and I mean, from here to Green Bay, it would take you multiple hops. I actually had someone got a call one night, and someone in Dallas, Texas, was asking me about my station. Station was making it there on there was tropospheric ducting, and we worked each other for 45 minutes on a 2-watt Radio Shack HT into a Ringo antenna. So yeah, it's been around a long time, and it's digital, and we had an awful lot of fun with it, and that's the neat thing. Of course, I used to get to play with big toys. I put in a satellite uplink station originally, and we ran analog, and then we ran digital, and the difference was the saturated transponder with analog. I was looking at about 75 to 125 watts with a traveling wave 2 amplifier, had a dual 300 watters. When you went to digital, you were looking at about 42 hundredths of a watt to hit that spacecraft 22,300 miles away. That was the size of a school bus, and that was cool.
Hey, Stan, does this look familiar? Can you see it? That's a Radio Shack HTX 202.
202, yes, sir.
I
That's
got
the
a couple.
model.
Wait,
Yep,
hold-
that's
Dave,
the model.
Dave, is that one too? Oh, wait. Time out. Let me see the label on the top. Is that realistic? You've got the first one. I got the second version. Mine says Radio Shack. They went away from the customized names. Cool. Very cool. Dave, I got a couple.
Mine says
Oh, that's
realistic.
Tom. Oh, that's Tom. Excuse me. I'm sorry. You guys changed positions on me there. All right. I got a question. Speaking of Radio Shack, did you guys use radio controlled cars? We sold a ship pot full at Radio Shack.
Which kind of radio?
RC cars, radio controlled cars. Primarily, you only saw them at Christmas time.
Oh, no, I never did that.
You never did? Dave. You
I remember
obviously-
Radio Shack had them, though. I remember Radio Shack had them.
I'll
They were
bet
cool.
Dave had a bunch of them, I'll bet.
Radio Shack cars? No, not really.
No?
Yeah,
I've had some, but
I had a little dune buggy, and yeah, it was cool.
And you remember, there's only two frequencies, 27 megahertz and 49. So you had to be careful. You could control somebody else's car if you had a more powerful antenna to boost it and change it over. Ron, you're shaking, or you're nodding that you had them, you played with them?
Yeah. Well, also airplanes, radio controlled airplanes.
That
You
would be
had the
fun.
long string on it at first, and then they came out with the radio control with it. It was fantastic.
Hey, quiet.
A lot of fun.
You know, when radio control planes, electric batteries, when they started to get light and small, took over for the gas engines. A lot of
Yep.
those planes are electric, and I know several ham operators that all of a sudden they got into radio control planes because they said, "Hey, I get it." Didn't want to mess with the gas and all that, and that sport, or whatever you want to call it, expanded greatly when it went to batteries. So
We'll have to get Bob Strobel on here, because a friend of mine, he does the wired control planes. But Radio Shack, we sold an RC boat, but we found out later on that was a submarine because it never stayed. It always sunk.
When I was a kid, we have an airport with a Air Force base by it, and we used to, one of the things we did as a kid was build a kite. So I built a kite one time with my cousin, and it was about 7 feet, 8 feet tall, and real big. Put batteries on it with lights to run it at night, but it needed a tail on it. So we connect the aluminum foil tail. My father came back from the Navy, and there was this thin, maybe 1 inch wide aluminum that would put on for a tail. And you ought to see the jets buzz that thing to figure out what it was over there by the airport, because it was up about a mile.
Crazy.
It was good. A little bit of sidetrack.
We were just talking, Dave, with our 2 meter, and Tom, or with our 2 meter Radio Shack. What about police scanners? Did you guys have police scanners? I see a yes. Stan?
Oh,
to monitor cell phones.
Definitely. I think I started out at a Regency, which was about a 6 or 12 channel crystal control. And then I went up to a programmable. I had a Bearcat BC 210. And that was really cool because you could put all those in there. And then then I forget what we went to after that, but back then you used to hit the state police were on 42 megahertz, 42,850, I think, around here. And so they used to be fun. Then when everything went digital and everything went encrypted and everything went trunked, so was the end of those. It was no longer fun.
Hey, Brian, you worked in law enforcement, police scanners. You probably had one at your house, but what did you think of people listening to them? You're muted again.
There we go. My dad had one. My uncle had one. I had a couple cousins that did. And I just, we had 10-hour days back then, and I was on the radio for 10 hours and did not want to hear it when I got home.
Yeah.
But I got out just before the trunk systems came in. And we had, in the medic units, we had VHF and UHF. And out of one medic unit, and we did this a number of times. If dispatch went down, that medic unit had enough radios in it that we could talk to every fire department, every ambulance agency, every police agency in the Tri-County area. And we would find a hill someplace and take over dispatch.
Interesting. Dave, did you ever, I remember at radio, we sold crystals to go in the scanners. Sold them a scanner, had 10 spots. Which frequencies do you want to buy to put in there? That was different. But Dave, did you ever play with those?
I remember the walkie-talkies where you had to put crystals in them. And then the way me and my buddies, we would reverse them so that we were be out of the frequency, so nobody could hear us. So it was a way. It was a way we had it because we had a friend that was like kind of like, eavesdropping on conversations, and we would just like go to the secret radio, and we would get, and but I was surprised that worked. You could reverse the crystals, and we both had the same channel 14 crystals, and we just like reverse. There was a transmit one and a receive one,
Right.
and I didn't understand at the time what that actually did, but it did happen. Change frequencies on us, and we were probably out of phase or something.
Did you guys ever go to radio? We used to have tube testers. Did you guys ever recall that at Radio Shack or test?
I remember them. Yeah. I had my first ham shack was all tubes, Hallicrafters, great big tubes, weighed 150 pounds, literally. I don't know how much it weighed, but great big tubes in there. And you take it down to Radio Shack and test it out. I think I did it a couple of times just for fun, just to glow the machine, to make the machine do its thing.
And I remember we actually stocked tubes, and also we can order other ones if we don't carry them. So Stan, you've been around. Did you?
Oh yeah. Well, I had my first receiver was a National Communications NC 183, which weighed enough by itself. And then I had a Heathkit Apache TX1, which was, well, let's put it this way. You needed a table with legs about yay in diameter in order to hold the thing up. And when you got through with it, didn't matter how good the table was. It kind of looked like a swayback horse with those two radios sitting on top of them. And then I got small. And I went to I built an HW7 when they first came out. It was the Hot Water 7, and that was cool. Couldn't talk to anybody because I didn't have enough good skills with it, but it did work, and that was where we graduated to.
Wow, cool. Hey, I'm looking at the clock. It's been an hour. Where's the time gone? You guys have fun?
Yep.
Hey, Dana, I have a question. Dana?
Yes,
Can
sir.
you hear me? Oh, so if somebody wants this digital roundtable, is this like going to be an open thing so we could get more people to get in on it?
Absolutely.
So they have to be invited though, don't they? Or they got to know the link, right? You can't just look it up.
Just share it with them. I don't care.
It'll be the same link every time, or how does that work?
It'll be the same link because we're using my Zoom, but oh wait, somebody's got something in chat. Let's see what. Oh,
That was just me saying I'd be right back because I had to get
Sorry.
an Amazon package.
oh, that's good. What'd you get? What'd you order?
Oh, it's just a TP Link wireless, the Frisbee. I'll show it to you. Frisbee. So speaking of networking, yeah, I'm redoing all my routers. So I built my own router. It's OpenSense. I don't know if you've ever heard of OpenSense, but it's
I've not heard of that one.
it's basically it's just the box itself is just a PC with 4 ports on it, really, and then I'm just loading the router operating system. So I got that in place. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to talk to you guys today.
I
And
just
then,
saw I saw
Then the
something.
Wi-Fi.
Yeah, I was up till 1, and I'm just getting caught up on emails, but I saw something. I think it was Amazon had a deck of cards that's a Windows 11 computer with 3 HDMI ports, 2 USB-C ports, and a power supply for it and cooling stuff. They said it's Windows 11, and I'm thinking, wow,
Yeah,
technology.
those mini PCs are getting cheap, and I am surprised they come with a Windows 11 Pro license on them. So like the Windows 11 Pro license itself is like $130, and they're selling these things for like $160. I don't know how they're getting away with that, but no, it's cool. I know some people that have bought them and they're happy with them. So
It's like
Vendor discounts, they call it.
Yeah, also
Microsoft makes deals with anybody who wants to have volumes.
Bye, Brian.
Cool. So I was going to say, it's like the Pi Star versus Arduino. I've got a bunch of that stuff to build. Finding the time. I just got to make time. So anyway, it's after 8, and I thank you, gentlemen, for joining me tonight. We're going to do this on the second Wednesday of every month, 7 to 8 Eastern time. And we don't have a topic. We just throw something out or whatever's in the news or what's on your mind. And if you have friends that you'd like to have join us, I enjoyed it. I think I just hearing chatting, Dave, seeing your realistic radio, which is older than this one. I got a couple more in the closet. I'm gonna have to take a look.
You mean Tom, right?
Well, you guys swap positions on it.
He's over here. Yeah.
Hey, I'll have to send you a picture. I have 2 of the same radio. It's an MTA 16 and 15 from Radio Shack. They look identical. There's different catalog numbers. One says Realistic, the other one says Radio Shack. Realistic is the older, but it was one of the best tabletop radios we had. So
the realistic stuff is the older. After a while, they went to Radio Shack. Is that how it was, Dana?
Right. Because
Wow.
they found people didn't. Who's Realistic? It sounds like a cheap Chinese brand. We don't want it. You know, we want a name brand. But I could tell you a story about that later. But anyway, it's time. I gotta head to the airport in Grand Rapids to pick up my younger brother in an hour. The girlfriend and her mom got here. I gotta help her mom in. So, and a dog to play with and eat some pie.
Are you gonna put this on YouTube? Is it on YouTube somewhere?
It is. If you go to my YouTube channel, I got to figure out how to get it over to the digital radio one, but I will get that done.
What's your YouTube? What's your name on YouTube so I can go look
Dana F. West.
Dana F. West.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'll share the link once I get it up there, right there.
Sounds
cool.
Good.
I got to run. I got stuff I got to do,
Dana.
guys. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dana.
It was fun. You guys take care, and we will do this again.